From inside the warehouse at Oriole Park at Camden Yards, it is the MASN All Access Podcast, brought to you by Marymount University. Visit MarymountSaints.com to learn more about our student athletes and programs today. As always, Paul Mancano, joined by a very denimed out Bobby Blanco.
Yeah, it's my look now.
That is
just hilarious because I used to never wear denim.
Really?
Yeah, I was not a big jeans guy. I was always more of a cat guy. We talked about this.
Yeah, I'm still not a jeans guy.
It's definitely a all boys Catholic school look. Where it's just wearing those every day. But just finally found a pair of jeans that fit me, and then I was like, all right, I can work with this, and then found the top.
Just kept going from there.
Yeah.
I mean, the shirt isn't denim, but the pants are for the... no. The shirt
undershirt, no.
Undershirt is not.
But it's denim colored.
Denim colored.
Very blue.
Do you have a true denim jacket to go along with it?
I do. It's actually in my car right now. I chose not to wear it.
Oh, that could have been a full...
I was wearing the full denim look on Saturday. Yeah, I was at a wedding. Oh, no, excuse me, Friday night.
A denim wedding?
Yeah, not a denim wedding. It was kind of out in Leesburg, Virginia, in a barn type area, but the rehearsal dinner, after party type thing, decided to do all denim. So this denim shirt, actually, with a darker colored jeans. And,
why all denim?
A denim jacket and a bolo tie. Just for fun.
That was their decision?
It's kind of No. It was kind of it was a cowboy themed, actually. So it's like,
oh boy,
the bride wanted everyone to wear like cowboy boots and stuff, and I was like, I don't have cowboy boots, but I can rock all denim like a cowboy and a bolo tie like a cowboy, so I'm gonna do that.
Did you previously own a bolo tie?
Yes, I have done this outfit before. I showed up to a wedding last fall in all denim. That was more of
Is it the same group of friends?
No, well, yeah, actually, my best friend from college. Last year's wedding was a buddy from college. This was his sister's wedding. But the first wedding was more of a let's kind of be silly and have silly attire. I could go on. That was a whole ordeal. But yeah, so rocking the denim. It's fall. It's a good look. It's comfortable.
For the bolo tie, I've never owned one or worn one. I'm guessing it's just like you don't have to actually tie it.
No, it's
just like a string,
zip.
right?
Or it's kind of like a zip. I mean, it's just there's like a clip on the behind where it just like it just kind of presses on the like string to tighten it up. Mine like kind of gets me right here on the neck. So that kind of like
a little too tight there.
Yeah, I have to keep it a little loose because like there's the way it's shaped.
Right,
like, it's
looks like a little guitar pick or something.
Some look like that. Mine's more of like it's got like edges, it's like edges around, and it's got like a point at the top. It gets me like right in the neck. Yeah. So I had to loosen it up a little bit so it wasn't like choking the entire time.
That just makes me think of, I'm showing my age here, but Doug Dimmadome. Fairly Odd Parents.
Yeah.
Well, I will never wear a bolo tie for as long as...
Never say never. I said the same thing.
Yeah.
Just a little over a year ago. And look where we are.
Good to know. By the way, Amy Jennings, of course, as always, producing this podcast. Doing a great job behind the scenes of coming from her 3 a.m. Shift, doing double duty. There was a podcast recently. Do you know Josh Hart from the NBA, former Villanova basketball?
Not Josh Hartnett, the actor, but Josh Hart, the basketball player. Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Josh Hart, not the... Yeah.
Not Josh Hartnett. He's an actor.
Okay. Different. Okay.
Yeah.
He has his own podcast, and apparently he was...
athletes do that now.
Yeah, apparently. And apparently he was on his podcast and hinted at something he was going to say, that he was going to disparage the Lakers organization that he played for. And the producer on the podcast says, well, go ahead and say it. I'll cut this out later. And he says it and basically says, it's like a trash organization or whatever he said. I don't know exactly. And the producer kept it in.
Did he just forgot to cut it?
I think.
Oh, my God. That's a nightmare.
What a betrayal.
That's a nightmare. We have before we used to do like these video podcasts and we would just do audio. Like we would have to sometimes like stop. Like, all right, wait, hold on, go back. We'll cut that out.
Exactly.
And my biggest fear was always we're going to forget to edit something out.
Yeah.
And put it up, and it's just going to be a disaster.
Say something just terrible.
Inappropriate,
so,
yeah.
Amy Jennings, you hold our lives in your hands. So thanks so much. No pressure at all.
She seems thrilled.
So, of course, we are in a little bit of a lull as we get ready for the winter meetings. Things hopefully should heat up after that. Some exciting stuff coming our way in terms of what's going on around here, though, because We have the winter warm-up, which is coming up, which is one of the things that the Orioles are doing kind of to come up with different ways to engage with fans. Of course, FanFest is no more, but Winter Warm-Up is now a new creation by the Orioles organization. Sounds like an exciting event hosted by Rob Long, emceeing, and of course, Mike Elias, Sig Mejdal will be there. It's going to be hopefully a little bit warmer. It won't be like true January. I don't know what the weather is going to be like in a couple weeks, but should be a good time here at the Royal Park.
It's smart. It seems like one of those like in-season special ticket events that they would hold, like usually at the end of the season, or like and you don't have to be a season ticket member to do this, to attend this event. But it seems like one of those events where you get like special access to the ballpark, and get to have like, it's not a meet and greet, but like a kind of a State of the Union type conversation with Sig Mejdal and Michael Elias, and obviously MASN's Rob Long hosting, like you said, and be right. They're basically turning Utah Street into Winter Wonderland, which is I think it's a really good idea. Condensing it from, it's not replacing FanFest, but like it's condensing FanFest in terms of it's being in the holiday season, holiday spirit, from like a 9 to 6 day at the convention center to just an 11 to 2 afternoon here at the park. So yeah, it should be a really great time. I'm imagining those tickets are flying off the shelf. I'm looking at Rocco blog right now, and when he wrote about it after the announcement, I believe it was last night, right? Yesterday afternoon, and just seems a great fan responses. Fans seem very excited for this. They seem real, 50% off the team store all day. Yeah, that's pretty clutch. Like right in time for the holidays too. Get stuff for your favorite Orioles fan.
That's probably the best part of the whole thing.
It should be a really, really cool day down here on Utah Street.
Yeah, exciting for that as well. And of course, as mentioned, winter meetings are just around the corner. And after that, not only is the 2019 year done, Bobby, but the entire decade is complete. From 2010 to 2019, a lot of people are kind of taking stock of the decade. It's kind of everybody likes to take the month of December and
how many top 50 music lists are we going to see? Or like top.
I saw a top 100 movie list.
Top 100. Yeah, it's usually 100. 100 movies, TV shows, music,
I've got another one for
albums.
You there, Bobby.
What's that?
It is top 10 plays, or top 10 games, rather.
Games.
Of the decade. Top 10 Orioles games of 2010 to 2019, which is, of course, an arbitrary cutoff. But it does kind of work perfectly with the Orioles window, with, their competitiveness. They didn't really start to, they got Buck Showalter in 2010. They didn't really start to turn the corner until 2012. When they made the wild card game. They made the playoffs 3 times in that 5-year span. And of course, they had more wins than any other American League team in a 5-year span. So there were a lot of good moments of this decade. You might not be able to say that from 2000 to 2009, but 2010 to 2019, there were a lot of good times.
It was a great time to be an Orioles fan, and it was a time where this franchise really took a turn, we thought, for the better. And then now they've taken another turn as well for the better. But, I mean, it was so much fun, especially for lifelong fans who were around, like, our age, being in our early 20s during our college years, because up to that point, like you said, between, like, 20, we barely remember the 90s teams that were made the playoffs those couple of years. And the only really great thing about Orioles baseball for the long time in the 2000s was like the end of Cal Ripken's career. Yeah. And we also talked about Brian Roberts with his Baseball Hall of Fame nomination the other week. But like him in those years with Miguel Tejada and Melvin Moore, those were really good years. But other than that, there was not much to root for this team. And then, a big trade happens. You get an Adam Jones. You get a Chris Tillman. You draft Manny Machado, number 3 overall. You get Jonathan Scope to come up. And it kind of just, you mentioned Buck Showalter. It kind of just picked up some momentum and turned in really good, fun years for Orioles fans between really 2010, like you said, and 2016, 2017, maybe first half of 2017.
Exactly. It was an exciting era of Orioles baseball, and it was a very defined era. It was a consistency throughout that entire era with those franchise guys there with you pretty much the whole way. So I decided to compile a list. I have not put them in order. And right now I have more than 10, but I figure we can maybe lop one off the list. Maybe we can arrange them in a certain order and get some feedback as well on these, because I'm sure there are personal favorite games of fans who are listening that are not going to be mentioned in this. And there are games that I'm sure I'll mention that other people would never have thought of or might not think deserve to be on the list.
Right.
So we're going to go through these as well and just kind of reminisce on some of these games.
This is a very appropriate exercise for this time of year because I feel like the holidays, we're recording this on Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Christmas and Hanukkah and New Year's are right around the corner, and it's like a family telling the same 10 family stories at like Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner, whatever it may be, every single year. I mean, these are like, I think we picked 10 pretty obvious ones, like you said, I should say you picked them. And these are going to be the 10 games that Orioles fans, like from our generation and older, are going to be telling their kids and grandkids, oh, I remember those years with Manny Machado. Oh, I remember those years with Adam Jones and Buck Showalter.
Exactly.
So they're going to be telling these stories over and over again for years to come, which is pretty funny.
Exactly. All right, number 1 on the list, Bobby. I think this is going to be number 1. It's the first one we're going to talk about, but I think most fans would put it right at the top in terms of games of the decade. 2014 ALDS Game 2. Delman Young, of course. The Orioles were trailing 6-3 to the Tigers, headed into the bottom of the 8th inning. Delman Young, 3-run double off the wall in left field. The Orioles take the 7-6 lead on that double and, of course, go on to win. Most people have said, who have attended that game, have said not only that it was the loudest that they've ever heard Oriole Park at Camden Yards, but a lot of people I've heard have said it's the loudest they've heard any stadium ever.
Yeah. This was the first game that came to my mind when you brought this exercise up to me before we started recording. And it is, I think, unanimously has to be the best game of the decade because it was just an incredible moment to come back, and it completely changed the complexion of that series in the ALDS because, they were on the verge of going back to Detroit, tied 1-1, a couple outs away, and then and obviously the Orioles ended up sweeping, and this was the moment that changed, that just completely knocked this wind out of the Tigers' sails. And I've heard, my girlfriend was at this game on a whim, and and I was like, when I found out, I was like, you were at Game 2?
Right, yeah.
Oh, my, and I was not at Game 2 because I was actually in Nats Park covering the Nationals NLDS Game 1 that year. And I remember being like, being at a playoff game is very cool, but I was like, oh my gosh, I would have given anything just to be in our studio or in the vicinity because, apparently Oriole Park at Camden Yards was absolutely rocking. The stadium felt like it was shaking. You could hear it from across the city. That is the monumental moment of the decade. And it might be one of the monumental moments in Orioles history at this point, just because it was unbelievable and the drama that it ensued afterwards and I remember the call and it's down and he scored and it was just an incredible moment for the O's, and that's by far number 1 for me.
Our boss Spiro Alafasos broke the garters or guards on the windows in order to lift up the window to hear the Orioles fans during that game and in that moment. It was a pretty incredible moment, of course, for the Orioles. And maybe you might make an argument that was maybe, the second or third best moment in Camden Yards history, going outside of the decade, if you put 21-31 at the top of that list?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you could definitely make the argument. It wasn't one of the first postseason games in a long time, but it was the biggest postseason victory in over a decade, probably since the 90s. So
exactly.
And that you felt like, and I think what made it so big, and it's because I know the Orioles made the postseason in 2012, but the wild card game was in Texas that year, and then that was the first year that they introduced the wild card game. Never forget the Orioles won the first wild card game ever.
Yep.
But that's when they did the division series where the lower seed hosted the first 2 games and the higher seed would then host games 3, 4, and a possible 5.
Yeah.
Which is backwards, which is incorrect and weird. But so the first 2 games of the ALDS against the Yankees were here. So the Orioles couldn't really win the series here, and they ended up splitting. But you just felt like Baltimore was building up to that moment in the Delman Young double. Just they wanted to erupt so badly in a playoff game, and they finally got the chance. And no Orioles fan will ever forget that moment.
There are 2 other games from that ALDS, because of course it was a sweep, that I think just the fact that they swept that series, and you look at the pitching matchups of that series, it was Chris Tillman in Game 1 going up against, I believe, Max Scherzer was the starter. Game 2 was Justin Verlander versus Wei-Yin Chen. Game 3 was Bud Norris versus David Price.
Yep.
And Anibal Sanchez came out of the bullpen in one of those games, I believe. That is ridiculous to think that the Orioles swept them in that series. If anything, you would think it would be the other way around. And the fact that the O's swept them in that series and they only played the one game on the road is ridiculous. So the other 2 games, I think, deserve mention. I don't know where they would be on a list. I think they would easily be on a top 15 list. I think for now we'll stick them in the top 10, but fans might disagree and just kind of boot them. But the fact that they were playoff wins in a playoff series that was won by the Orioles, I think deserves mention. So game 1, Max Scherzer versus Chris Tillman. Orioles led 4-3 in the 8th. It was a close game. And then once again, the 8th inning was the magical one for the Orioles. They scored 8 runs in the bottom of the 8th and took game 1 against the Tigers.
Yeah, and I kind of, you're right. I think these games had to be mentioned, especially because it ended up as a sweep.
Yeah.
And it was their first playoff series victory in however long it was. But yeah, it's definitely the pitching match. The fact that they went through those 3 Cy Young winning pitchers, and not to mention, you talk about the matchups, but you look at what Bud Norris pitched 6 1/3 scoreless innings against the Tigers in Game 3, and then they only needed Andrew Miller and Zach Britton to close it out.
Yeah.
And it was a close game throughout. After the first 2 games were 12-3. You mentioned the big game, 8th inning in the Game 1, and then obviously 7-6 in Game 2. I kind of bunched these together. I think Game 2 is its separate thing. That moment by itself was a separate thing. But then you think about the whole series as a whole, maybe are mentioned as one of the top 10 moments in this decade, just because it ended up in a sweep. They ran through a gauntlet of a starting pitching staff. And it was the first postseason victory and series victory in so long.
Yeah, in that Game 3, Zach Britton, as you mentioned, closed it out. He allowed a run in that 8th inning, I think, to J.D. Martinez, who was on the Tigers at the time, and Nelson Cruz hit a 2-run homer in the 6th, and that was all the O's needed. 3 very different games in that series, too. Of course, Game 1 ended in a 12-3 blowout, but it wasn't like that most of the way. Game 2 was the comeback 7-6, and then Game 3 was, of course, that 2-1 win. So if they didn't score 8 runs in that 8th inning in Game 1, it would have been 3 1-run games that they would have won that series.
And then you also think about Game 3. I'm looking at the box score now. I forgot about this part. You mentioned Zach Britton giving up the run, so it's 2-1 in the bottom of the 9th. Then it gets a strikeout with 2 outs, but then Buck Showalter intentionally walks the tying run.
Yeah.
And of course, Zach Britton gets a double play to close it out. So it's like, it was a very close game, and even though the Orioles had all the momentum in that end of that game, it was still very close to the end and nerve-wracking because, I'm sure every O's fan was having flashbacks to the Tillman Young double, and then be like, oh my God, the Tigers are about to get their payback right here. But Zach Britton said nah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, one more playoff game I do want to mention. A couple more, actually. Going back to 2012, of course, 2014 was the first series win for the Orioles in a while, but they did get their first playoff win, postseason win at home since 1997. October 8th, 2012, they beat the Yankees 3-2. Chris Davis, 2-run single in the 3rd. Mark Reynolds, an RBI single in the 6th. Wei-Yin Chen started that game 6 1/3 innings of 1-run ball. That if the Orioles had won that series, that would have been one of the more incredible postseason series in maybe in Orioles history, because it was such an exciting series, and the fact that they came back to force Game 5, which we'll talk about in a minute, but the fact that they won Game 2 too, and taken down the Yankees in their first playoffs ALDS in forever.
Yeah, and I think it's because it's the Yankees that helps. I know every Orioles fan is going to want to beat the Yankees in the playoffs.
Yeah,
but yeah, the first win, and also, like I said, it came at home too because of the weird format that they did with the first year of the wild card game. So they were able to get it at home in front of the home crowd. I think is very special. You mentioned other fans maybe who are listening and putting together their own personal list. Like, I think we're hitting here the big obvious ones. And a lot of fans are probably going to have specific ones to, like, the time I brought my dad to the game or my son to the game for the first time, or, we all did like a night out at the park, and it was just so much fun. To me, I remember this game because when the Orioles made the playoffs, my dad and I bought tickets, and I grew up an Orioles fan because there were no Nationals when I was younger, and being able to go to my first Orioles playoff game because I wasn't old enough to go when they were in the 90s was like very special. And I remember it was raining and cold. And I think there was rain delays for both games 1 and 2, and we decided to tough it out for game 1 because it was the first game back. They ended up losing. Game 2, we were like, we can't do it back-to-back nights. We got to go. So we went home and watched the game, but just still, and of course the Orioles won, and we were like, dang.
Yeah.
But I will always remember because, like you said, it was the first victory at home in so long in a postseason game. Also against the Yankees.
Yeah, exactly. And then 3 days later, October 11th, they forced Game 5 with a win in Game 4. Remember, Game 3 went to 12 innings, and then this one also went to extras, and this one went an inning more, went to 13. J.J. Hardy doubles to score Manny Machado in the 13th inning. O's beat the Yankees 2-1. 8 Orioles pitchers used in that game, and the bullpen pitched 7 1/3 scoreless innings. Gutsy performance to force a Game 5 in that series.
Yeah, and I think this goes down as one of any postseason game goes to extras. It's just so nerve-wracking, and especially when you're on the road because it means you have to close it out on the mound.
Yeah.
But obviously the Orioles bullpen, like you said, 8 pitchers, but the Orioles bullpen back then was its strength, and they had so many guys to throw out, and postseason all hands on deck. But yeah, it's a gutsy effort to force a Game 5, and in that situation, that's all you want. You want the opportunity to try to win a Game 5, and a winner take all. And it was a special performance, definitely.
All right, let's get into some regular season games. Let's go from the games that mattered the most to a game that actually didn't matter, which is September 28th, 2011. The Robert Andino walk-off single in the 9th off Jonathan Papelbon. The Orioles beat the Red Sox 4-3. Of course, they were not a playoff team at that point. They were around a 63-win team that year. But they did eliminate the Red Sox from the playoffs, and they scored 2 runs in that bottom of the 9th, came back from a 3-2 deficit, and Andino walked off the Red Sox. We have the very great Gary Thorne audio clip, of course, of that. So let's roll that now, Amy.
Here's the 1-1 delivery. That is at the right field, and no, it's trapped! The Orioles coming to the plate, rival! They did it! They did it! They did it! The Orioles have beat the Red Sox! 2 runs, bottom of the 9th inning!
Gotta love how pumped Gary Thorne gets for that. Especially considering that was like the most meaningful Orioles game in a long time, and they were not even a winning team at that point.
Well, I was going to say, you started off by saying a game that didn't matter. To me, all these are really good games. This is the most important game on this list. This was the turning point of the Orioles being, a down team, a downridden team, to becoming contenders. It started it all. This started the whole Buck and Adam era of winning and success, and it was really kind of a message to the rest of baseball, but more specifically the AL East, that hey, we can compete with you guys now, and we're here to stay for a couple of years. And just the way that whole night went down, I remember where I was watching, because obviously they knocked the Red Sox out of the playoffs, and then you switch over to the Rays Yankees games, and was it Evan Longoria who hit the walk-off home run, and that did it. So to see all that go down in the matter of a couple of minutes, I think, was really cool. And like you said, it didn't mean anything for the standings, but it meant a lot for that ball club and this organization for them to be able to pull that victory off, and the way they did, to walk it off and really have a turning point in their career and in their franchise's history to be coming back to contenders.
That was such a crazy night too, because in the National League, I think at the same time, it was like within, I don't know the exact time frame, but felt like, I think it was under an hour.
Uh-huh.
The Braves got eliminated by the Cardinals as they came all the way back in the NL wildcard race. It was just a crazy night for baseball, the last night of the regular season.
Yeah.
And the Orioles were a big part of that. And that did kick off a pretty big era. It felt like a big deal at the time, but of course it didn't mean much standings-wise, but it was a big deal in the larger context. Because the next season, of course, they made the playoffs. And there were plenty of great moments from 2012, including September 13th, 2012, Manny Machado walk-off single in the 14th over the Tampa Bay Rays. O's win 3-2. And, of course, that was a great game for Manny Machado in the field as well. And one of the greatest calls from Gary Thorne, maybe ever, and certainly in his MASN broadcasting career. So let's take a listen to that clip.
3-2 away. Longoria waiting. Slow ground ball. Manny Machado barehanded. Don't throw it away. Don't throw it at all. What a great play to Hardy. And Wieters will put the tag on him. Wow. 20 years old and knew exactly what to do. A shortstop converted to a third baseman at the major league level. Makes the biggest defensive play of his career and keeps this ball game tied at 2-2. The Orioles will try and win it in the bottom of the ninth.
Gary said it all right there. A rookie playing third base came up as a shortstop in a big-time September game, making a massive, incredibly heady play in the field, and then, of course, he walked it off in the extras.
I mean, this was Manny Machado's coming out party, and any Orioles fan who just listened to that and didn't get goosebumps like I just did is not an Orioles fan, because that everyone knows don't throw it away, don't throw it at all. Everyone says it all the time. It's one of the best calls. Gary Thorne is just a chef's kiss of a call. It is a treasure. But it was Manny's coming out party as a rookie, and it was like, the first time in that season. I mean, they played well that season, but this was like, okay, we've got talent here. We've got young talent that can carry this team, carry this organization, be the face of the franchise. And the fact that, what Manny does there, like you said, in a September game in the middle of a playoff race, coming in, the situational awareness. Talk about all the times how rookies really need to slow the game down, because it's just the jump from AAA or AA to the major leagues is so vast, and it's hard for them to slow the game down at times. To know the situation of the game in that big situation, it was just amazing to see. And I remember watching it live and just being awestruck. I mean, it was just amazing to see. And then I think that he was, 19 or 20 when he made that play. It's just unbelievable.
The situational awareness of him and Gary in that moment, because literally the camera moves because they think the throw's coming to first base. Machado just whips the arm, fakes the throw, turns around, sees the runner off the base. An incredible play. And
don't forget about J.J. Hardy, because he could have very easily not have been at third base covering.
Yeah.
He could have just stayed about. But, we talked about so many of for those years of how great J.J. Hardy was at shortstop. And that was the reason Manny didn't play shortstop coming up, because they had J.J. Hardy. And what J.J. Hardy, Manny said this too, before, I think when he left the Orioles, but how much J.J. meant to him and his career defensively, and it's that type of play that a young player sees that and can be like, all right, that's how I want to play, just being aware at all times. And that's why obviously Buck loved having JJ out there too. He was literally the captain of that defense because of plays like that.
I skipped over it, but let's go a week back in time, September 6th, 2012. Many fans might remember this as the Cal statue game, because that was when the Cal Ripken Jr. statue was unveiled before the game. Then the Orioles offense comes alive. 6 homers against the Yankees. They're jumping all over the Yankees early. Yankees come back from a 6-1 deficit in the 8th. Then the Orioles score 4 in the bottom half of the 8th, retake the lead, and go on to win 10-6. Matt Wieters, Robert Andino, Mark Reynolds twice, Adam Jones, Chris Davis, all homered in that game. 6 homers to beat the Yankees and kind of take over, as one of the powerhouses, reestablishing themselves as a powerhouse in the American League East, and to do it on a night when they're honoring Cal, who was on the last World Series team, the last great Orioles team, pretty much. What a moment.
It's a special moment, and those are types of games like when you're revealing a statue or retiring a player's number, or we've seen them host or whole teams like 75 anniversaries or whatever it may be. It's just a regular season game. It should be just a normal game, but those are the kind of games you're like, I want to win it for whoever's being honored today.
Yeah.
And the fact that they did for Cal, probably one of, if not the greatest Oriole of all time, and then also against the Yankees, and how they did it too. All the home runs. They beat the Bronx Bombers by hitting a bunch of bombs.
Yeah.
And the names. I mean, think of the names. Matt Wieters, obviously one of their first draft picks, strong draft picks. Robert Andina became a fan favorite. Mark Reynolds was a huge fan favorite. Adam Jones was a leader of the team. Chris Davis obviously put together those really great years for a long time. So it was just a great day for Orioles fans, all in all, from the Cal statue to all the home runs and just beating the Yankees in a slugfest.
Yeah, and that was how those teams were built. That was a slugging team in the Orioles that really powered them through, of course, the 3 playoff appearances in those 5 seasons. They did it by dominating, by hitting the long ball at home. So that was a great game as well. All right, let's stick with 2012. I definitely have more here. Oh, yeah. A couple of months earlier, May 6th, 2012. Chris Davis at Fenway Park pitching 2 scoreless innings in a game that we play often on MASN as an Orioles Classics game. 2 scoreless innings in extras, and the Orioles beat the Red Sox 9-6 in 17 innings. Adam Jones hits a 3-run homer to put them up in the 17th, but, of course, the game ball went to Chris Davis in that game. Because it was his first ever appearance on the mound, and he looked legit. Yeah. Gary Thorne had the call again on that one, and Gary Thorne, of course, touched it with his magic.
Sweeney and Pedroia, the base runners. That's going to go to short. Could be 2. Andino. The Orioles win it. Chris Davis is the winning pitcher as the Orioles have swept it here. They come away with a 9-6 win, and the game ball is taken immediately by Mike Reynolds and given to Chris Davis in his first Major League appearance on the mound.
One of many magical moments in that magical 2012 season.
Yeah, and just, I guess magical, but also just like kind of bizarre. I mean, baseball's so weird like that. In what was it, 17 innings you said?
Yeah.
And not only does Chris Davis pitch an inning, he pitches 2.
Yeah.
And puts up 2 zeros. I mean, it's so impressive. And like you said, he looks like he kind of belonged there. He did really well for them to able to. He got the W. It was like the first Orioles position player to ever record a W in like, I don't know what years it was. It was just a very bizarre but exciting game because it went so long and it was so close. And Buck Showalter had no choice but to throw a position player out there, and it worked out for him.
And, of course, we saw Chris Davis pitch this year. And because ever since that moment, fans really started clamoring for Chris Davis to get on the mound.
Yeah.
Because,
you want, and because, he can do it.
And then he gave up a home run to Jonathan Scope this year, but that was unfortunate.
Yes. What comes around goes around.
Yeah.
But Wellington no, not Wellington. Oh, my gosh, who's the other catcher? Who's the catcher this year that pitched?
Oh, Sucre?
Sucre, yeah. That was another.
This is Sucre, yeah. And, of course,
he pitched well, too, didn't he? He pitched a scoreless inning.
Yeah, and, of course, the West Coast game, I believe, went 17 against the Angels this year. Mm-hmm. That's
not history
maybe the win of the season.
Yeah, an odd history of position players pitching for those. But worked out indeed.
Started
with the Chris Davis.
Let's jump ahead 2 years. Sticking in the regular season, September 16th, 2014, O's clinch the AL East for the first time since 1997. Steve Pearce went yard in that game. Tommy Hunter on the mound to close it out. And what a celebration at home as the O's clinched the American League East.
Yeah, this is an important game. The first championship since 97.
Division title.
At home. Against the Blue Jays, a rival, and I got so many of these calls sort of echoed, and Jim Hunter with the perfect Orioles are champions, and like the celebration on the field with the fans. I just automatically picture Adam Jones running around the lap of the field with the flag and pouring beers on fans and like throwing stuff in the crowd. I mean, it was just a really cool sight to see, and it meant so much to the fans here. And obviously the players, they work so hard to get to, they made the playoffs 2 years before. 13 was kind of a down year, but to finally win the division in a tough AL East, it was really impressive. Not to mention for us here at MASN, I don't think you were here yet, Paul, but
I was not.
That was our first clinch miss. The Nationals also clinched that. It's the very same night, so it was a busy night here in the warehouse.
Yeah.
But being able to see the Orioles do it at home, which was really, really cool and really special, and that was a special team.
Yeah, that was absolutely a special team. That was the best team of the decade, I think you could say, easily. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Not just in regular season, winning 96 games, but of course, advancing to the ALCS. All right, one more game. I think this is number 11, so one of these has to be lopped off, but we'll get to that in a minute. August 19th, 2017, of course, not a playoff year, but I remember being here and covering this game for social, I think, tweeting this game, when Manny Machado, 3 homers in that game, including a walk-off grand slam to beat the Angels 9-7. Zach Britton caught that ball from the bullpen out in left center field. That was just going to show the specialness that Manny Machado was bringing to that team. And the fact, it was just another reminder of how good he was in an Orioles uniform and how he could carry an entire team. Yeah,
and these are 2 guys who were supposed to be. I know Zach Britton technically wasn't a part of the play, but you could see him in the highlight, and those are the faces you would probably think of when you think of that moment. And those are the 2 guys that everyone thought would be corner pieces for this team for a long time. It obviously didn't turn out that way, but yeah, real special moment. It was what was it, 9-7? But it was kind of a back and forth game, and obviously the Orioles were down because the grand slam was the one to walk it off. But yeah, it was another one of Manny's really spectacular moments. And I remember the one in Chicago when he hit 4 home runs in his first 4 at-bats. That was a really incredible moment too. But this one was kind of the first one being like, this dude is special.
Yeah.
He's got that it gene, and whatever it is, he has it because he makes spectacular plays both in the field and at the plate when it counts the most.
This time it was Jim Hunter, not Gary Thorne, but a spectacular call nonetheless.
Center field. Did he do it? Back it goes, and that ball is gone! It's out of here! There's a walk-off grand slam, and the Orioles win it. A 3-home run game for Machado.
Just another one of those moments where he had already had 2 homers in the game, and he comes up to bat, and you're thinking, there's just no way. There's no way he can do it again.
But then you see that swing, and you're like, oh, of course he did. Yeah. Like, that swing, I mean, he just had one of the smoothest swings there are in baseball. I talk like he's not playing anymore. He's not playing here. But one of the smoothest swings in baseball. It seems effortless, and the fact that he crushed it to the bullpen, man, it almost felt like. And then of course the bat flip too, like the arms up to the dugout. It was like you mentioned, like there's no way he's gonna do it. But then like when he did, I'm sure everyone's reaction was, of course he did.
Yeah.
Like why did we ever doubt him?
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's try to put these in some kind of order. We have them all in front of us. If you're trying to keep track in your head, we have the 2014 ALDS Game 2. We have the Game 1 of that ALDS, Game 3. Manny Machado walk-off, as just mentioned, grand slam. Chris Davis pitching 2 innings in Fenway. Machado's walk-off single in the 14th in 2012. Don't throw it away. Don't throw it at all. 2011, Robert Andino walks off Jonathan Papelbon, the Red Sox. Cal statue game. O's clinch AL East in 2014. 2012, O's earn first postseason win since 1997. And 3 days later, O's force an ALDS Game 5. Number 1, very clearly.
Yeah, ALDS Game 2. Everyone knows that game as Game 2. It's got to be number 1.
Do you have to put another playoff game in the second slot? That's the question.
So we're doing the best games.
I think greatest, yeah.
Greatest. So
I don't know if there's a difference between best and greatest.
Well, I would say the greatest, like best is like, oh, that was a really good baseball game. Like Orioles have some good games. That could be a best game that they ended up losing. But greatest games, you obviously have to win. They have to be meaningful. There's something being celebrated about it.
Yeah. That's a good point. So I think we can bump down the 12-3 win in ALDS Game 1 because I wouldn't describe that as a great game per se. It was a great game, not the greatest.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can agree.
So I think number 1.
I would definitely put Game 3 over Game 1 because that ended up winning the series.
Exactly. Okay. So we're going to put a 2014 ALDS Game 2 in the first spot. I think we might have to put Manny Machado, don't throw it away, don't throw it at all in the second spot, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that was a great game in a playoff race in September in the first time that they made the playoffs since 97.
Yeah. I think that's a very fair game to do. I really, and this is where we might differ. Personally, this Robert Arendino walk-off in 11 against Jonathan Papelbon has been pretty high. Again, to me, it just signified the turning point for the Orioles to become competitors, and really we're going to be like, hey, we're here to play. And the fact that it knocked off a fierce rival out of the postseason, and just the way that whole night played out, that was a great moment for this team. Even though, again, it didn't mean anything in the standings or how the 2011 Orioles finished, it just meant a lot to that team and this fan base to accomplish something. You always want to knock your rivals out. You always, if you can't win, my rivals can't win either.
I'll accept it. Game fourth on the list, I would go with the ALDS Game 3 when they advanced to the ALCS. And right behind that, I would put the Cal Statue game at number 5.
So I would put actually the clinching the AL East at 5. Again, just a very important, like another huge moment. I mean, not that the Cal Statue game isn't a huge moment, but it didn't have any greater significance other than honoring Cal Ripken and beating the Yankees.
Right.
Clinching the AL East for their first division title in almost 20 years is a very big moment, especially for a storied franchise like the Orioles who had struggled for so long.
That's fair. All right. Beyond 5 in the bottom half of the list, I think one of the wins from 2012, I think it's O's Force Game 5, October 11th, 2012. I would put that at 6, perhaps because of the stakes of that game.
Yeah.
And the fact that it went to
extras,
13 innings. Yeah. And then behind that, it's close. I think I would go Chris Davis pitching 2 scoreless in May of 2012.
Have you put the first postseason win up there yet?
I have not yet.
So again, I think I'm going to put that higher than the Chris Davis one because it just, I mean, not that game wasn't great. It was just a freaky game. It was obviously very fun to watch, but it was a game in May. So it didn't have a much greater significance other than it was a 17-inning game and a position player pitched 2 scoreless innings. Whereas, their first postseason victory in however many years it was, 15 years, is pretty special. So again, to me, that just has a greater significance to the overall Orioles as an organization than the Chris Davis pitching 2 scoreless innings.
That's fair. And then I think the only one that we have left is the Manny Machado walk-off, I believe, correct? Did we miss any?
I think so. I think you're right. Yeah. And you're putting that last?
I would probably have to. I think every other game had more stakes, and 2017 not a playoff year.
Yeah. And obviously the way that you ended up, I mean, I guess you got to look at it the greater picture. And it's along the lines where great moment for an individual player. Mm-hmm. But, if we're talking about the team, overall team, we'll always think about Manny's best moments as an Oriole. That'll come up. But Orioles' best moments of the last decade as a team, I don't think that can. Yeah. It was a great individual performance, but it didn't have any other significance than Manny Machado hitting 3 home runs in a walk-off grand slam.
And, of course, these are just our opinions. Yep. So if you think we're wrong, please let us know. And if there are any games that you think we might have missed, because I'm sure there are 162 games in a season, there are going to be games that were fan favorites, maybe personal favorites of yours that we may have missed. So please let us know which ones deserve to be on that list. Of course, you can tweet at us. I'm at Paul Mancano. He's at Bobby_Blanco. Please review, subscribe, all that good stuff on our new Orioles stream on the MASN All Access Podcast. And, of course, at MASN Orioles on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. And, of course, the MASN Orioles YouTube page. So be subscribing, liking, reviewing, commenting, all that good stuff.
Yeah, anywhere you can find where you found the MASN All Access Podcast, you can find the MASN All Access Podcast Orioles slide down. Just search MASN All Access or MASN or Orioles, whatever. It'll pop up. It'll be right there. It's a completely different stream than it was before. You can subscribe to that and spread the word that we are 2 separate streams now. So if you just want O's content, that's where you find the O's content.
Exactly. And, of course, the MASN All Access Podcast is brought to you by Marymount University. Visit MarymountSaints.com to learn more about our student athletes and programs today. He's Bobby Blanco. I'm Paul Mancano. Thanks to Amy Jennings producing behind the scenes. We'll see you later.